There are five early hominids. These five are Australopithecus, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Neanderthals, and Cro-Magnons, who are also known as Homo sapiens.
Early humans migrated from Africa to Eurasia, Australia, and then to the Americas.
They moved because they were hunter-gatherers whose survival depended on the availability of wild plants and foods, so they needed to move from place to place in search of food so that they could feed themselves and their families. Australopithecus lived from 4 million to 1 million BCE. They were primarily found in East Africa. Their brain was the size of modern humans, and they had long arms but human-like legs. Australopithecus was bipedal, it lived in small clans, and they were nomadic. Australopithecus walked on 2 feet because walking on 2 feet saved more energy than walking on all fours, and this energy saving allowed Australopithecus more time for reproduction. After Australopithecus was Homo habilis. Homo habilis lived from 2.5 to 1.5 million BCE, and they were primarily found in Africa. Their face was like Australopithecus, but their brain was larger, and they had ape-like arms. Unlike Australopithecus, however, Homo habilis used simple tools such as sticks and stones, and they were hunter-gatherers. Next is Homo erectus, which was way more adapted than Australopithecus and Homo habilis because they were the first to use fire and they created the first spoken language, which included not the advanced language like we have today, but just grunts like oh or oh oh oh. After Homo erectus are Neanderthals who lived from 100,000 to 40,000 years ago. They lived in Africa, Europe, Western Asia, and the Near East. Neanderthals had a larger brain than modern humans, and they were shorter and stockier than modern humans. Neanderthals created really sophisticated tools like stone knives and spears. After Neanderthals is Cro-Magnons who lived 100,000 years ago to present day. Cro-Magnons have a large brain and relatively slender bones. They have advanced tools, they were nomadic, and they were the first to settle permanently in civilizations such as Indus and Sumer.
Early man either lived in the Paleolithic Age or the Neolithic Age. The characteristics of the Paleolithic Age were they were nomadic, they had cave art, they had an oral language, they used fire, they invented tools, and they lived in clans. After the Paleolithic Age came the development of agriculture, which led into the Neolithic Age. The characteristics of the Neolithic Age were development of agriculture, domestication of animals, use of advanced tools, pottery, and development of weaving skills.
Archaeologists study past cultures by locating and analyzing human remains, settlements, fossils, and artifacts. A recent Neolithic settlement that is currently being excavated in Anatolia is Çatalhöyük, and archaeologists have also excavated early cities in the Fertile Crescent, and these early cities are Aleppo and Jericho. Another example of an archaeological site is Stonehenge, which is located in England and was begun during the Neolithic Age and was completed during the Bronze Age. The first river valley civilization was ancient Sumer, and it was located in Mesopotamia, which is inside the Fertile Crescent between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Ancient Sumer had advanced technology. This allowed them to have more efficient farming. Examples of these technologies were the sailboat, the plow, wheel, and irrigation. These great tools allowed the people in Sumer to have agricultural surpluses and have great amounts of food. This surplus in agriculture allowed the people in Sumer to specialize in trades. Specialization is when workers who can focus on other occupations or trades aside from farming due to an agricultural surplus. Examples of this are weavers, scribes, and soldiers, and this allowed Sumer to have an economy based on both agriculture and trade. We know a lot about ancient Sumer because they used record keeping to keep track of events, trade goods, and literary expression. The first form was pictograph, which is pictures of things that tell you what they are, and the next thing they used was the Sumerian writing, which is known as cuneiform. Ancient Sumer had a social structure shaped like a pyramid, with priests and commanders at the top ruling Sumer, artisans and merchants next, and then farmers, and then slaves who worked for everybody. The religion in ancient Sumer was polytheistic, which means that religion was based on thousands of gods of nature and everyday life. They were polytheistic because they believed that it was the nature gods who allowed them to have agricultural surpluses and lots of food. Sumer was such a successful river valley civilization that there were many empires after Sumer that based themselves off of Sumer, such as the Akkadian Empire ruled by the Sargon of Akkad and the Babylonian Empire ruled by Hammurabi. Hammurabi's empire had a harsh code of punishment called Hammurabi's Code. Next is the Indus River Valley Civilization, which reigned from 3200 to 1300 BCE.
Indus was between the Ganges and Indus River. Flooding was unpredictable. Seasonal winds that controlled the climate were called monsoons that happened there. Their natural barriers were Himalaya Mountains, the Karakoram Mountains, and the Hindu Kush Mountains. Indus had very advanced city planning with plumbing, had a economy based on how the people met their basic needs, and based on agriculture and trade. It was mostly an egalitarian society, which is a society of equals, and they were polytheistic.
Next is the Egyptian River Valley Civilization, which lasted from 2686 BCE to 2181 BCE. It was located in the Nile River Valley and had many natural barriers such as deserts. Egypt Egypt's economy was based off of agriculture and trade. Egypt also had a pharaoh, who was like an Egyptian god king, and a government where a ruler is a religious figure or god is known as a theocracy. The Egyptians also had a language known as hieroglyphics.
Nubia was a region located in Kush. It reigned from 2000 to 1000 BCE. It spread to include the rest of Egypt from Nubia to the Mediterranean. It was a trading kingdom. It came across Egypt when Egypt was spreading south. Then was ancient China, which was a river valley civilization. The rivers it had were Huanghe and Yangtze. The natural barriers were the Himalayas, Gobi Desert, Plateau of Tibet, and Plateau of Tibet. The borders were the Yellow Sea and the Pacific Ocean. It also created yellow silk called loess.
China's government was a dynasty, which is a line of hereditary rulers of a country. Its dynasties were the Jia dynasty, then the Shang dynasty, then the Zhou dynasty. Ancient China also had bronze working and iron tools to make life easier, and it also had bronze working and iron weapons. At about 1100 BC, after Crete's decline, the most powerful traders along the Mediterranean were the Phoenicians. One of the Phoenicians' major export was purple dye, which only the royal could afford. Another important contribution from the Phoenicians was the phonetic alphabet, which is still used today in places like America and many other places in the world. A major world religion today is Judaism, and it originated in Ur, Mesopotamia. The religion of Judaism is monotheistic because they believe in one God named Yahweh. The religious book of Judaism is the Torah.
Abraham is the founder of Judaism. Abraham had a covenant with God. A covenant is a mutual promise. The covenant between God and Abraham said that God would watch over Abraham and his people if he moved them to Canaan, Egypt. This event is known as the diaspora.
After reaching Canaan, the Jewish people were forced into slavery, so they decided to flee Canaan. This event is known as the Exodus, and it was led by Moses. While the Hebrews were traveling across the Sinai Peninsula, Moses climbed to the top of Mount Sinai to pray, where God gave him the Ten Commandments and told him to give to the Jews. The Ten Commandments are believed to be another covenant between the Jewish people and God.